Captain Diana Russell stood on the bridge of the UNSF Horizon, looking down at the green-blue planet Taraxis IV. Once a thriving agricultural world, it now served as little more than a farm for the Empire, its people forced to work under harsh conditions. Life signs show approximately 4 million sentient beings, reported her science officer, and 20 Imperial guard posts. Diana nodded. This would be humanity's first liberation mission. After proving they could defend against the Empire, the human fleet had shifted strategy. Rather than simply holding ground, they would now bring freedom to oppressed worlds. Begin broadcast on all frequencies, Diana ordered. Across Taraxis IV, the people looked up as their communication devices suddenly activated. Many had never heard anything except Imperial propaganda. People of Taraxis, Diana's voice rang out. We are humans from Earth. We come not as conquerors, but as liberators. The Imperial guard posts on your world will be neutralized. You need not fear the Empire any longer. On the planet's surface, the Imperial guards scrambled to respond. They had never faced a real challenge to their authority. Before they could organize a defense, precision strikes from orbit disabled their weapons and communications. Teams of human Marines, led by Major Frank White, landed near the largest settlements. Unlike the Imperial troops, they carried not just weapons but also food, medicine, and technology to share. We're not here to rule you, Frank told a group of wary locals, insect-like beings with crystalline eyes. We're here to help you rule yourselves. The concept was so foreign that many couldn't comprehend it at first. Generations had known only Imperial control. Back on Earth, Senator Kelly Newman addressed the United Nations. The Grand Chamber was packed with representatives from every nation, and the session was broadcast worldwide. What we are witnessing is not just a conflict between humanity and an empire, she said passionately. This is a struggle for the very concept of freedom in our galaxy. I propose we formally establish a coalition of free worlds, open to any species that wishes to join. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would stand as the foundation of a new interstellar alliance based on cooperation rather than conquest. The news reached Fort Hope just as an unexpected visitor arrived. Imperial Admiral Jex Terran, a decorated veteran of 50 years, approached the station with 3 ships and requested asylum. The Empire has lost its way, he told Admiral Garcia during their first meeting. Many of us have known this for years, but your arrival finally gave us the courage to act. With Jex Terran came not just ships and intelligence, but also over 2,000 Imperial military personnel who had chosen to defect. There will be more, Jex Terran promised. Many in the Imperial fleet question why we fight to oppress rather than protect. Major Frank White found himself with an unusual assignment. Training a multinational and multi-species army, human Marines worked alongside former Imperial soldiers and volunteers from liberated worlds. Forget everything the Empire taught you about warfare, Frank told them. We don't fight for glory or conquest. We fight to protect. The Empire's propaganda ministry worked overtime to contain the spread of information about human victories. They portrayed humans as savage destroyers, but their message became less effective as more worlds saw the truth firsthand. Commander Ethan Wright and Susan Miller completed their covert mission, making contact with resistance leader Vex Celia, a former Imperial senator who had fled rather than support atrocities. We've been waiting for this moment for decades, Vex Celia told them. With your help, we can coordinate simultaneous uprisings across 6 Imperial systems. Ethan was amazed by the network Vex Celia had built. How have you maintained this resistance for so long? Hope, the alien answered simply. And now you've given us more than we ever dreamed possible. The carefully planned strikes began on the same day across all 6 systems. Important Imperial facilities were sabotaged, communication networks hijacked, and prisons opened. By the time Imperial reinforcements arrived, the people had already established their own governance. On Verid Prime, the Imperial Senate fell into chaos. Shouting matches erupted between factions as reports of defections and rebellions flooded in. "This is your fault." Senator Kexmera shouted at High Commander Vexmorith. "Your brutality has turned our own people against us." Vexmorith stood silently, his rage barely contained. The empire that had stood for thousands of years was beginning to crumble, all because of these humans and their dangerous ideas of freedom. "Enough," he finally said. "If the humans want war, I will give them a war they will never forget." The stars glittered against the vast darkness of space as the human fleet emerged from hyperspace. Commander Ethan Wright stood on the bridge of the UNSF Vanguard, his eyes fixed on the main display. After years of preparation, humanity had finally ventured beyond their solar system with a proper military force. "All ships reporting successful jump, Commander," said Lieutenant Susan Miller from her communication station. "Fleet integrity at 98%. Ethan nodded. "Thank you, Lieutenant. Have all vessels run system checks and prepare for potential contact." The human fleet consisted of 50 warships and 150 support vessels. They represented the pinnacle of Earth's technology and the unified will of its nations. For the first time in history, humans had put aside their differences to face the stars together. 3 light-years away, an Imperial border outpost detected the energy signatures of the emerging fleet. Captain Zex Toril, a tall blue-skinned being with 6 eyes arranged in a circle around his head, lazily examined the readings. "Another group of primitive newcomers," he sneered to his crew. "Send a standard intercept team. Remind them of their place in the Viridian Empire." The Viridian Empire had ruled this sector of the galaxy for over 3,000 years. They had crushed every civilization they encountered, either absorbing them as slaves or wiping them out completely. Their technology was considered unmatched. 5 Imperial patrol ships detached from the outpost and moved toward the human fleet. They expected to find crude vessels piloted by a frightened, primitive species ready to surrender. What they found instead shocked them. "Captain, these vessels," the Imperial scanner officer's voice trembled. "Their hull composition is unlike anything in our database. Energy readings suggest advanced power systems." On the Vanguard, Admiral Paul Garcia joined Ethan on the bridge. "They're scanning us," he said, looking at the approaching alien ships. "First contact, just as we trained for it." "Lieutenant Miller," Ethan said, "open communication channels on all frequencies. Let's try to talk before things get messy." Susan nodded and began broadcasting a carefully crafted message in multiple formats. "This is the United Nations Space Force Vanguard. We come from Earth seeking peaceful contact with galactic civilizations." The Imperial vessels continued their approach. Inside the lead ship, Captain Zex Toril received the translation of the human message and laughed. "Send them our standard terms of surrender," he ordered. "All new species must acknowledge the supremacy of the Viridian Empire and submit to immediate occupation." When Susan received the response, her face hardened. "Sir, they're demanding our immediate surrender. They're claiming ownership of this entire sector." Admiral Garcia frowned. "Typical Empire behavior. They expect us to bow down without a fight." "Let's show them that humans don't scare easily," Ethan said. "Send our reply." Susan transmitted their message. "We recognize your claims but cannot accept them. Humans come as equals seeking cooperation, not subjugation. We wish to establish peaceful relations." The response came quickly as the Imperial ships moved into attack formation. "They're charging weapons," reported Chief Weapons Officer Ryan Phillips. Ethan remained calm. "Defensive posture only. Shield all vital systems." The Imperial vessels fired, expecting to cripple the primitive human ships with a single volley. Their energy beams struck the human vessels' shields, dissipating with minimal effect. "Shields holding at 95%, Ryan announced. "Their weapons are powerful, but not as advanced as we expected." On the Imperial ship, panic spread through the crew. "Impossible," Zex Toril shouted. "Fire again." Full power. The second volley produced similar results. The human ships remained intact, their formation unbroken. "Sir," Susan said to Ethan. "Should we return fire?" Ethan exchanged glances with Admiral Garcia, who nodded slightly. "Target their weapons systems only," Ethan ordered. "Show restraint. We didn't come here to start a war." The human fleet fired precise shots that disabled the weapons on 3 Imperial vessels. The other 2 ships began to retreat. "They're sending distress signals," Susan reported. "Let them go," Admiral Garcia said. "They need to report back about us." As the Imperial ships fled, Ethan looked out at the stars. "We just made a powerful enemy, Admiral." Garcia nodded. "Yes, but we also showed them that humans won't be conquered easily. The Viridian Empire has just met its match." Across the galaxy, Imperial High Command received the distress signal. Emergency protocols were activated. For the first time in centuries, the Empire faced a species that could challenge its dominance. The humans had arrived, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. News of the failed attack spread quickly through the Viridian Empire. In the Grand Imperial Senate chamber on the capital world Virid Prime, hundreds of alien senators argued loudly. The chamber's towering stone walls echoed with angry voices from a dozen species. "This is unprecedented," shouted Senator Kexmara, pounding his 4-fingered hand on the table. "No species has ever resisted our first contact protocol." High Commander Vex Morith stood silently, his gray skin tight across his face. As leader of the Imperial military for 200 years, he had never faced such a situation. "The humans possess technology that rivals our own," he finally said. "Their ships withstood our standard weapons. This is concerning." "Then we must crush them immediately," another senator yelled, "before they grow stronger." Meanwhile, aboard the UNSF Vanguard, Admiral Paul Garcia called a meeting of his senior officers. They gathered around a large holographic display showing the border of Empire space. "We've established a defensive perimeter around our position," he explained. "Our new space station, Fort Hope, will be operational within 3 days." Commander Ethan Wright studied the map carefully. "The Empire won't wait long to respond. They'll see our presence as a direct challenge." Lieutenant Susan Miller entered the room with a data tablet. "Sir, Intelligence Officer Natalie Ross has returned from her mission." Natalie Ross stepped forward. Her uniform was dirty and her face showed exhaustion after infiltrating an Imperial communications hub disguised as a traitor. "The Empire is mobilizing the 3rd Imperial Armada," she reported. "Approximately 200 warships. They're planning to, in their words, eradicate the human infestation." The room fell silent as the officers absorbed this news. 200 ships against our 50, Ethan said quietly. Admiral Garcia's face remained calm. "Numbers aren't everything. Chief Engineer Daniels, what have you discovered about their technology?" Kevin Daniels, a tall man with work-stained hands, brought up technical schematics on the display. "Their ships rely on a crystalline power matrix. It's efficient but has a fundamental flaw in the shield harmonics. We might be able to exploit that." "Good work," Garcia said. "We need every advantage we can get." Back on Earth, President Alice Crawford faced the United Nations Security Council in an emergency session. The massive chamber was filled with representatives from every nation. "The Viridian Empire has made their intentions clear," she said. "They expect immediate surrender and subjugation. This is not acceptable." "But can we win a war against a galactic empire?" asked the French representative. President Crawford's voice was firm. "We don't seek war. We seek recognition as equals. Our fleet was built for defense, but we'll fight if necessary." She paused, looking at each council member. "I need your authorization to proceed with defensive measures and limited counterstrikes if needed." After brief debate, the vote was unanimous. Humanity would stand its ground. In space, the Imperial probe ships began a series of small attacks against the human perimeter. They tested defenses at different points, searching for weaknesses. "They're studying us," Ethan said as he watched the tactical display. "Learning our response patterns." Susan Miller monitored communications from her station. We're also receiving signals from several worlds within the Empire. Some appear to be from subjugated species. Interesting, Admiral Garcia said. The Empire might not be as unified as they want us to believe. On the Imperial command ship, High Commander Vex Morith reviewed battle plans with his generals. The humans show unusual restraint, he noted. They disabled our ships rather than destroying them. General Zex Vorin sneered. Weakness. They lack the will to do what is necessary. Vex Morith wasn't so sure. Perhaps they are more dangerous than we realize. Their technology is advanced, their tactics unusual. He looked at the holographic display of the human fleet. Prepare the Dominion ships for battle. We will crush these humans with overwhelming force, then make an example of their homeworld. As both sides prepared for the coming conflict, Chief Engineer Kevin Daniels made a breakthrough in his lab on Fort Hope. I've got it, he exclaimed to his team. Their shield modulation follows a predictable pattern. If we time our weapons fire precisely. The pieces were falling into place. The humans had expected first contact to be peaceful. Instead, they found themselves preparing for the biggest fight in human history. And across the stars, billions of beings under Imperial rule watched with growing hope. Perhaps these humans would be the ones to finally challenge the Empire's iron grip on the galaxy. The alarm klaxons blared throughout Proxima Station. Red emergency lights flashed in every corridor as personnel rushed to battle stations. The research outpost, humanity's first scientific base outside their solar system, was under attack. Captain Lisa Johnson stood on the bridge of the UNSF Defender, watching as 30 Imperial warships approached the station. Her ship was one of only 10 human vessels assigned to protect this outpost. All shields at maximum, she ordered. Prepare point defense systems. The Imperial ships moved in a perfect formation, their hulls gleaming in the light of the nearby star. They had come to make a statement by destroying this human foothold. Captain, called out Sam Powell, the science officer. I'm detecting unusual energy readings from their command ship, something different from our previous encounters. Lisa frowned. Send the data to Fleet Command. Then focus all sensors on their lid vessel. Aboard the Vanguard, Admiral Garcia received the transmission from Proxima Station. He turned to Commander Ethan Wright. They're trying to split our forces, Ethan said, studying the tactical display. This is a major attack, but possibly a diversion. Garcia nodded. We can't ignore it either way. Proxima Station has 300 civilian scientists. He made his decision quickly. Commander, take Battle Group 2 and reinforce Proxima. I'll maintain our position here with the main fleet. Ethan saluted and left to prepare his ships. Within 30 minutes, 15 human warships jumped into hyperspace. At Proxima Station, the first wave of Imperial ships opened fire. Their energy weapons slammed against the station's shields, causing them to flare bright blue. Shields at 60% and falling, reported Lieutenant Alan Reed on the Defender. Station can't take much more of this. Lisa Johnson activated the ship-wide communication system. All hands, prepare for combat maneuvers. This is not a drill. She turned to her tactical officer. Deploy HFY system. For the first time in actual combat, the humans activated their advanced tactical holistic electronic neural array, an AI battle coordination system that could process combat data thousands of times faster than organic brains. Suddenly, the human ships moved in perfect synchronization. They weaved between enemy fire with precision that seemed impossible. Their return fire targeted specific points on the Imperial vessels with devastating accuracy. On the Imperial command ship, Commander Zal Vorex watched in confusion. How are they moving like that? He demanded. No species can coordinate so perfectly. His tactical officer had no answer. The Imperial ships had always relied on overwhelming force rather than precision. Now they faced something entirely new. 3 Imperial cruisers exploded as human weapons found their weak points. The remaining Imperial ships adjusted their formation, but the human vessels seemed to anticipate every move. Then, just as the battle intensified, Commander Wright's reinforcements arrived from hyperspace, catching the Imperial fleet in a pincer movement. "All ships target their command vessel," Ethan ordered. "Use frequency modulation Delta 7 on all weapons." The human ships fired in unison, their weapons precisely tuned to exploit the weakness Chief Engineer Daniels had discovered in Imperial shields. The shots passed through the shields as if they weren't there, damaging the command ship's engines and weapons. Major Frank White led a team of Marines aboard a shuttle toward the crippled Imperial vessel. "Boarding team ready," he reported, preparing to breach their hull. The Marines, in powered armor suits, cut through the Imperial ship's damaged section and stormed inside. The Imperial crew, unused to close-quarters combat, were quickly overwhelmed. Frank fought his way to the bridge, where Commander Zalvorex was frantically destroying data terminals. "Surrender," Frank ordered, his weapon aimed at the alien commander. Zalvorex looked at the human with all 6 of his eyes. "You have no idea what you've done," he said before raising his hands in surrender. With their command ship captured and 6 other vessels destroyed, the remaining Imperial ships retreated. Proxima Station had suffered damage but remained intact. On the Defender, Science Officer Sam Powell made an important discovery while examining a disabled Imperial vessel. "Captain," he called to Lisa Johnson, "these ships, they're partially biological. The systems are integrated with living tissue." Lisa studied the readings. "Forward this to Dr. Bennett. She needs to see this immediately." The Battle of Proxima Station was over. The humans had won their first major engagement against the Empire. But everyone knew this was just the beginning. On his captured ship, Commander Zalvorex watched the humans with growing curiosity. Perhaps they were different from other species the Empire had conquered. Perhaps they were something new entirely. Commander Zalvorex sat in the holding cell aboard Fort Hope. The room was simple but comfortable, with a bed sized for his tall frame and atmospheric controls adjusted to his species' needs. He was surprised. The Empire would have put a captured enemy commander in much worse conditions. Dr. Olivia Bennett entered the room, carrying a data pad. She was the lead cynobiologist for the human fleet and had been studying Imperial biology since their first encounter. "I hope you're being treated well," she said, her voice translated by a small device on her collar. Zalvorex blinked his 6 eyes in sequence, a gesture of mild confusion. "Why do you care about my comfort? I am your enemy." "Humans don't see prisoners as objects," Olivia explained. "We want to understand you, not just defeat you." She showed him images of the biological components found in Imperial ships. "Can you tell me about this integration of living tissue with technology?" Zalvorex was silent for a moment, then spoke slowly. "It began 3 centuries ago. The Empire needed faster ships, better weapons. They found that certain species' neural tissues could process data more efficiently than computers." "You harvest parts from living beings?" Olivia asked, horrified. "From species deemed," he paused, seeming uncomfortable, "expendable." Meanwhile, Lieutenant Jack Martinez worked in the communications center of Fort Hope. He had been analyzing Imperial transmissions since their first encounter. Something strange caught his attention. "Look at this," he said to Susan Miller, pointing at his screen. "These signals are using Imperial frequencies but with non-standard patterns." Susan studied the data. "They're coming from within Empire territory, but they're not military or official channels." "I think," Jack said slowly, "we might be picking up resistance communications." Jack isolated one particularly strong signal and worked to decode it. After hours of effort, a message appeared. "To any who oppose the Empire, you are not alone. The resistance endures." Jack reported his findings to Commander Ethan Wright, who immediately saw the potential. "If there's internal resistance, we could have allies within the Empire itself," Ethan said. In the science lab, something unexpected happened. An Imperial scientist named Tix Lura approached the human research vessel near Proxima Station and requested asylum. "I can no longer serve the Empire," she told the security team that met her ship. "What they do to conquered species, it's wrong." Tix Lura was brought to Fort Hope for debriefing. She carried valuable information about Imperial fleet movements and internal politics. "The Empire is not as united as it appears," she explained to Admiral Garcia and his officers. "Many senators secretly oppose High Commander Vexmorath's policies. Some even admire human resistance." Admiral Garcia leaned forward. "Are you saying there could be a peaceful solution?" "Perhaps," Tix Lura said. "Senator Centaural leads a faction that believes the Empire has become too cruel, too focused on conquest. They wish to return to earlier days when the Empire was more a confederation of worlds." This information changed everything. The humans had been preparing for all-out war, but now there might be another path. Jack Martinez worked day and night to establish secure communication with the Resistance. Finally, he succeeded in making contact with a cell operating on an Imperial mining world. "We've been fighting the Empire for decades," the Resistance leader told him. "But we lack the strength to challenge them openly. Your arrival has changed everything." Ethan Wright and Susan Miller devised a plan to meet with Resistance leaders in person. It would be dangerous, requiring them to travel deep into Imperial territory, disguised as traders. "This is our best chance to end this conflict without massive casualties," Ethan told Admiral Garcia. Garcia nodded gravely. "Proceed, but with extreme caution. If you're discovered, we can't come to your rescue." As preparations for the mission continued, Dr. Olivia Bennett made a disturbing discovery. The biological components in Imperial ships weren't just harvested from expendable species. They were taken from the very races that had resisted Imperial rule. "It's a form of continued punishment," she explained to the command staff, "and a warning to others who might rebel." When Zalvorex learned that humans knew the full truth, he seemed relieved. "Not all of us support these practices," he admitted. "Many serve the Empire because we have no choice." For the first time, the humans began to see the Empire not as a monolithic enemy, but as a complex society with its own internal struggles. And in those divisions, they might find hope for peace. Ethan Wright looked at the star map showing their small fleet facing the vast territory of the Empire. "We came here seeking new civilizations," he said quietly. "Instead, we may end up helping to free them." The massive Imperial warships emerged from hyperspace like predatory birds, their hulls gleaming with menace. This was the elite Dominion fleet, the pride of the Empire, led by High Admiral Kex Voren himself. Over 150 ships arranged in perfect attack formation. "All stations report," Admiral Paul Garcia said calmly as he watched the enemy fleet on the main display of the Vanguard. "Shields at maximum. Weapons hot. All ships in defensive position," reported the tactical officer. Garcia had prepared for this moment. The human fleet was outnumbered nearly 3-1, but they had been studying Imperial tactics for weeks. "Begin Operation Mirror," Garcia ordered. Across the human fleet, special devices activated, projecting false sensor readings to confuse Imperial targeting systems. On the Imperial flagship, High Admiral Kex Voren watched with confidence. At 7 feet tall with gray-green skin and ceremonial battle scars across his face, he was the embodiment of Imperial military might. "The humans have nowhere to run," he told his officers. "Today we crush their pathetic resistance and teach the galaxy once again why the Empire rules." The Imperial ships opened fire, releasing a storm of energy weapons. Many missed their targets as the sensor ghosts confused their aim. Those that hit struck human shields designed to absorb and disperse the energy. "Shield holding at 80%, reported the defense officer on the Vanguard. "They're pressing hard on Sector 4, Garcia observed. "Just as we predicted." Chief Weapons Officer Phillips, "Are the new cannons ready?" Ryan Phillips nodded. "Yes, Admiral. Experimental plasma cannons charged and targeting." "Fire," Garcia ordered. Brilliant blue-white beams lanced out from several human ships, cutting through space with devastating precision. Where they struck Imperial vessels, shields flared and failed, hulls buckled and breached. Kexvorin couldn't believe what he was seeing. 3 of his cruisers disabled in the opening minutes of battle. "Impossible," he roared. "Adjust formation. Concentrate fire on their lead vessels." The Imperial fleet shifted, bringing overwhelming firepower against the center of the human line. The human ships began to fall back, seemingly unable to withstand the assault. "They're retreating," an Imperial officer reported. Kexvorin smiled. "Pursue them. No mercy." But he had fallen into Garcia's trap. As the Imperial fleet advanced, they stretched their formation thin, creating gaps in their defense. "Now," Garcia ordered. From behind a nearby moon, a reserve force of human ships appeared, led by Captain Lisa Johnson on the Defender. They struck at the exposed flanks of the Imperial formation with perfect coordination, guided by the ATGNA system. "Hit and fade." Lisa ordered her ships. "Don't give them time to reorganize." The human vessels demonstrated maneuverability that shocked the Imperial commanders. They darted between the larger enemy ships, striking critical systems and jumping away before the Empire could respond effectively. Lieutenant Ben Simmons led Griffin's squadron, 12 fighter craft that seemed impossibly fast against the bulkier Imperial vessels. "Target their command nodes," Ben instructed his pilots. "Use the frequency modulation we practiced." The fighters slipped through gaps in Imperial shields, placing precision strikes on communication arrays and sensor systems. Without central coordination, parts of the Imperial fleet began to act independently, further fracturing their response. On Fort Hope, Carol Evans and Dr. Olivia Bennett worked frantically to complete their countermeasure to Imperial shields. "Field test is showing 98% effectiveness," Carol said, watching the data stream in from the battle. "Send the frequency calculations to the fleet," Olivia replied. "Every ship needs this advantage." The battle raged for hours. Human vessels took damage, with 3 destroyers disabled and 1 lost with all hands. But the Imperial losses were far greater: 17 ships destroyed and over 30 crippled. High Admiral Kexvorin could not understand how his superior force was failing to achieve victory. "Their tactics make no sense," he shouted as another report of lost ships came in. "They fight like no species we've ever encountered." When Ben Simmons led his squadron in a daring attack on Kexvorin's flagship, targeting its engines, the High Admiral finally gave the order to withdraw. "Tactical retreat," he commanded. "Regroup at Viridian Outpost." As the Imperial ships limped away, Admiral Garcia did not pursue. The human fleet had been bloodied but remained intact. "A defensive victory," Garcia told his officers. "We've shown them we can stand against their best." The battle ended in stalemate, but throughout the Empire, word spread quickly. The invincible Dominion fleet had failed to crush the humans. The myth of Imperial invincibility was shattered. On countless subjugated worlds, people looked to the stars with something they hadn't felt in generations: hope. High Commander Vex Morith stood on the bridge of his massive flagship, the Imperial Wrath. Around him spread the largest fleet the Empire had assembled in 5 centuries. Over 300 warships gathered for one purpose: to crush the human threat once and for all. "Set course for the human homeworld," he ordered. "We will end this rebellion at its source." The Imperial Armada moved through hyperspace like a storm, leaving behind the fracturing empire that Vex Morith refused to acknowledge was falling apart. On Earth, the early warning systems detected the approaching fleet when it was still beyond the orbit of Jupiter. President Alice Crawford immediately called Admiral Garcia. "They're coming in force," she said, her face grim on the video screen. "Our analysts count at least 300 ships." Garcia nodded calmly. "We anticipated this. Operation Shield Wall is ready." The human fleet, now reinforced with vessels from liberated worlds and Imperial defectors, took up defensive positions near Neptune's orbit. 58 human ships formed the core, with another 42 Allied vessels supporting them. "We're outnumbered 3-1, Ethan Wright noted as he studied the tactical display aboard the Vanguard. "Numbers aren't everything," Admiral Garcia replied. "Begin deployment of the sensor buoys." Across the solar system, small devices activated, creating a network that would allow the HFY system to coordinate the entire fleet with unprecedented precision. Lieutenant Susan Miller monitored communications. "All ships report ready, Admiral." Engineer Daniels reports the shield system is online. Back on Earth, Engineer Kevin Daniels and Dr. Olivia Bennett worked on the final adjustments to a revolutionary defense system. Based on their study of Imperial technology, they had created a planetary shield that could protect Earth from bombardment. "Power level stable," Kevin reported. "The shield can withstand anything short of a supernova." As the Imperial fleet approached Neptune, they detected the waiting human forces. "Such a small fleet to protect their homeworld," Vex Morith sneered. "This will be over quickly." But as the Imperial ships moved into attack range, Susan Miller broadcast a message on all frequencies. It wasn't directed at the Empire, but at its people. "To all beings serving the Viridian Empire," her voice rang out, "we are transmitting evidence of Imperial atrocities against its own citizens." The broadcast included testimony from defectors, footage from liberated worlds, and records stolen from Imperial databases. It showed the biological harvesting program, the slave labor camps, and the ruthless suppression of any who dared question Imperial rule. "We do not fight the people of the Empire," Susan continued. "We fight only those who would deny freedom to others." On many Imperial ships, crews watched in horror as the truth they had been denied was finally revealed. Some had suspected, others had known but feared to speak, and many had been completely unaware of the Empire's darkest secrets. As the broadcast concluded, 3 major Imperial province commanders sent an unexpected message to their ships. "Stand down. We will no longer support this corrupt regime." Nearly 70 Imperial vessels powered down their weapons. Some changed course, refusing to participate in the attack. "Traitors," Vex Morith screamed. "Destroy them along with the humans." Loyal Imperial ships fired on their former comrades, creating chaos in their formation. The human fleet seized the opportunity, moving with perfect coordination guided by HFY to exploit gaps in the Imperial line. Captain Lisa Johnson led a strike team targeting Vex Morith's command vessel. Her ship, the Defender, slipped through the chaotic battle, accompanied by 2 vessels commanded by defector Admiral Jex Turan. "Target their command and control systems," Lisa ordered. "Disable, don't destroy." The 3 ships fired precision shots that cut through the Imperial flagship's shields. Boarding pods launched immediately after, carrying Marines and Special Forces. Major Frank White led the assault team onto the Imperial RAF. "Remember your training," he told his multinational force as they breached the hull. "We're here to capture Vex Morith, not kill them." The fighting was intense but brief. Many Imperial crew members surrendered when they realized their cause was lost. Others fought to the death, loyal to Vex Morith's vision to the end. Frank and his team fought their way to the bridge. There they found Vex Morith, standing alone as his officers had fled. "You have lost, Commander," Frank said, weapon raised but not firing. Vex Morith looked at the human with hatred. "The Empire has stood for thousands of years. You cannot destroy it in a few months." "We don't want to destroy," Frank replied. "We want to transform. There's a difference." Across the solar system, the Imperial fleet was in disarray. With their command structure collapsed and mass defections continuing, the once mighty Armada had become a scattered collection of ships without purpose. On Earth, people watched as the threat to their world faded. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge and emerged victorious. 3 months after the Battle of Earth, Fort Hope had been transformed. Once a military outpost, it now served as a diplomatic center where representatives from 17 former Imperial worlds gathered to discuss the future. The massive central chamber hummed with conversation as beings of various species mingled freely. Some had been bitter enemies under imperial rule. Now they cautiously explored the possibility of peace. President Alice Crawford entered the chamber, accompanied by Admiral Paul Garcia and Commander Ethan Wright. A hush fell over the crowd as she approached the central podium. "Welcome," she said, her voice translated into a dozen languages simultaneously. "Today marks the beginning of a new chapter for all our peoples." She gestured to the view screen showing the vastness of space behind her. For too long, the galaxy has known only conquest and submission. The strong dominated the weak. Resources were taken, not shared. But humans believe in a different way. We believe in cooperation, in mutual respect, and in the right of all beings to determine their own future. The gathered representatives listened intently. Many had never heard such ideas spoken openly. "We propose the formation of a galactic cooperative," President Crawford continued. "Not an empire, not a human-led alliance, but a true partnership of equals. Each world would maintain its sovereignty while contributing to our shared security and prosperity." The chamber erupted in discussion. Some representatives nodded enthusiastically, while others appeared skeptical. Senator Vexilia, the former resistance leader, rose to speak. "My people suffered for generations under imperial rule. Why should we trust any central authority again?" President Crawford nodded. "A fair question. The cooperative would have limited powers, focused on trade, mutual defense, and diplomatic coordination. All major decisions would require consensus, not majority rule." As the discussions continued, Captain Ethan Wright and Lieutenant Susan Miller stood at a viewport, watching ships from 100 worlds moving peacefully around Fort Hope. "Did you ever imagine this when we first jumped into Imperial space?" Susan asked. Ethan shook his head. "I expected first contact, maybe some trade agreements, not reshaping the political structure of the galaxy." Susan smiled. "You have to admit, it's very human of us to show up and immediately start changing things." Across the station, Dr. Olivia Bennett was conducting the first session of a new multi-species scientific exchange program. Researchers who had once been forbidden to share knowledge now collaborated openly. "The principles of physics apply equally to all our worlds," she explained. "By combining our understanding, we can achieve breakthroughs that would take centuries working separately." In the military section of Fort Hope, Admiral Garcia watched as the human fleet was gradually reconfigured. Weapons systems were scaled back on some vessels, while humanitarian and scientific equipment was installed. From warships to peacekeepers, he mused to Major Frank White, who stood beside him. "Some will stay combat-ready," Frank noted. "There are still Imperial loyalists out there." Garcia nodded. "Yes, but they're isolated now. The core Imperial worlds have withdrawn behind their borders. They're no longer a significant threat." On Earth, the public watched the proceedings from Fort Hope with pride and hope. Schools held special lessons about the new galactic community. Children drew pictures of alien friends they hoped to meet someday. Refugees from imperial persecution found new homes on human colonies. Many brought valuable skills and knowledge, enriching the communities that welcomed them. Former Imperial Admiral Jex Terran served as a liaison between ex-imperial worlds and the emerging cooperative. His knowledge of imperial politics proved invaluable as the new order took shape. "The empire took thousands of years to build," he told a human reporter. "It will take time for the wounds to heal. But for the first time, I believe healing is possible." 6 months after the peace talks began, representatives from 52 worlds gathered for the formal signing of the Galactic Cooperative Charter. The ceremony was held in orbit around Earth, visible to millions watching from below. As each representative signed, a cheer went up from the assembled delegates. Even former enemies embraced, recognizing that they shared a common future. The final act of the ceremony came as ships from every member world formed an honor guard around the UNSF Vanguard, the vessel that had made first contact with the Empire. Captain Ethan Wright stood on the bridge, watching the colorful array of vessels surrounding his ship. He remembered the uncertainty they had felt entering unknown space, not knowing if they would find friends or enemies. "Humanity came looking for our place in the stars," he said quietly. "Instead, we helped everyone find a better way forward." As the vanguard led the procession of ships in a triumphant circuit around Earth, the message was clear. The age of empires had ended. The era of cooperation had begun.